immediately the entire amount of R&D except some computer software, and the problem will tell you. On the other hand, if certain criteria are met, you can capitalize some part of the R&D. So now we will do number 23. So number 23, Langberg AB spent 1 million kron in 17 and to develop a product, and they determined that 25% of this amount was incurred, and that followed that IASB standard, and they can capitalize it. That means 1 million out of 25% of it, 250,000, they can show it as an intangible asset. And the new product that they will get through this R&D, they will bring it next year in market, 2018, and that has a life for 5 years. What you need to do? First, I'm going to show you the journal entry for 17 and 18 under both methods, IFRS or GAAP. Then I'll show you the conversion entry for both years. What if you do the conversion end of 17? What if you do the conversion end of 18? So let's do the journal entries here. But before that, somebody will tell me, it was the game last question, only few people got it. So, what should be the R&D expense for US GAAP company? Online people use the chat box. I'm doing 23. And I showed you that US will expense the entire amount. In class people, somebody will tell me, what would be the US GAP's R&D expense? I'm sorry, I cannot see your face. I cannot connect you, those who are in class, but somebody can tell me. Under US GAAP, what would be the R&D expense? Yes, Maureen, please.
$1 million.
Yes, because GAAP says next year you have to show the entire amount as an expense. Yes, so the whole amount you have to show it. It's crore, so their R&D expense will be 1 million. Now IFRS says that out of that 1 million, 25%, which is 250,000, you can capitalize it. Capitalize, and I told you that means you can show it as an asset. And they have one accounting standard, IAS 36. You don't need to memorize this, but according to that standard, certain criteria are met. So now you will tell me, online people use the chat box under IFRS, what would be the R&D expense? And in class people, under IFRS, what would be the R&D expense? Brian, you want to try?
Good question.
Nick or Hudnitok or Celine or Andre Joe. IFRS's R&D expense will be how much? Online people, please tell me what would be the R&D expense for IFRS company. No one.
It would be 750,000.
Yes, it would be 750,000 because you are capitalizing 250. You are capitalizing 250. So the R&D expense will be 750. And you're going to show the 250 as an asset. And the rest 250, you will call it as intangible assets. Intangible assets, which means 250, that was part of our question. Now, for that intangible assets, what you are capitalizing, the information says that you have a life, 5 years. So if you know the value of an asset, no matter intangible, tangible, you know the life. What you need to do?
Divide it by 5.
And you need to divide it to get amortization or depreciation. For intangible, we use the term amortization. Now, Brad, can you tell me, my asset value is 250, and after knowing this life 5 years, what would be my every year's amortization expense?
350,000.
250 divided by 5, 50,000. Now remember, when they will bring the product, they will bring it next year. So they will start counting the amortization expense from next year, but I'm just showing you all numbers. So now you know the logic, you see the difference from the exhibitor chart. Now I'll show you how will be the journal entry, and of course we'll do the conversion entry. Let's think of US GAAP first. So first I have to show the whole thing so that I'm squeezing a little bit, try to fit it in one page, but you can take more space and you could write it more clearly, and I'll also show you IFRS. So now, what we need to do? US GAAP needs to record the R&D expense. So they didn't tell the date when they spend it, just do it by using the year. So for the first year of 2017, they're going to record the expense. Very simple. R&D expense debit, and they paid cash because it says they spent 1 crore. Who can tell me the number? Thank you, Tom and Alexis. I didn't see you use the chat box. Great job. US GAAP's R&D expense. Celine, yeah.
1 million.
1 million. So you're going to debit 1 million. You're going to credit 1 million. Good job. Now, think of IFRS. What IFRS is going to do? So, they will show R&D expense, but how much? R&D expense, Kajal, what would be IFRS's R&D expense? 750. And the rest they're going to debit as an intangible. So they will record 750 as an expense, and the rest they will call it as intangible assets, 250. Well, altogether they also spend cash, and you have to credit the whole amount. You are just splitting it because 25% is capitalized. Now, if it's the first year scenario and you have to convert it from IFRS to US GAAP, everyone, online people, please try to understand and do it by hand, and you will tell me the numbers. What if I have to convert from IFRS to GAAP? And of course, conversion happens at the end of the year, December 31st, 2017, conversion entry. So now first look at the differences here. Cash, cash, both are same. Do we need to do anything with cash? No, because both methods are showing the same numbers. So forget about cash. What you need to do the adjustments? R&D expense. Remember, our goal is to show the US GAAP number. So currently, IFRS is showing 750 R&D expense. So their R&D expense is lower by 250. I want to show 1 million R&D expense. So I have to increase R&D expense by 250. Increase expense means you have to debit it. So I'm going to debit R&D expense by 250. Now, think of IFRSs. They have an asset, intangible asset, 250. But if you follow GAAP, you never can show any asset from your R&D. So, under GAAP, you could not show these assets. You have to eliminate these assets, remove these assets. Asset is a debit number, you have to eliminate it. So how you going to do that? You're going to credit intangible assets. So I'm going to credit intangible assets. So this is how, if you adjust these two entries, you will see it is showing the US GAAP numbers. So now here, next year will be a little bit complicated because of some cumulative impact on retained earnings. So I'm just splitting, showing this line to show next year's. So let's do US GAAP. If they need to do anything, then do IFRS. Well, they spent the money, they recorded it. But what IFRS guys did? They recorded an asset, they know the life, and the information tells you that The product, they brought it from R&D, that will go to market in 2018, and that will generate revenue for 5 years. So every year, now you have to record an amortization expense under IFRS. How about US GAAP? Do you need to do anything under US GAAP? Yes, no? US GAAP? Actually, for US GAAP, you will do nothing, because US GAAP, you spend it, that's it. US GAAP, you didn't show any asset, so you don't need to record any depreciation expense. For 2018, US GAAP will do nothing. But for 2018, IFRS will show depreciation or amortization expense. Well, for intangible, we call it amortization expense. And it's an expense, so we're going to debit it. Amortization expense debit, and we already know the number. The intangible asset was 250, life was 5. So you split, divide it, every year's amortization expense is 50,000. For intangible, we usually don't use the term accumulated amortization. Rather, you directly reduce the asset. So you have to reduce your intangible assets by 50,000. So again, US GAAP will do nothing because they don't have any asset. They don't need to do the amortization. IFRS showed that an asset, so they have to record the amortization expense for 1 year. Now, what would be the conversion entry? If you need to convert it from IFRS to US GAAP. And again, conversion we do end of the year 2018. This is 2018. I'll show you the conversion entry. Now, we will remember the same logic. Look, what happened in first year? First year, IFRS's expense was lower by 750. If you look at this two number I'm pointing, IFRS's expense, R&D expense was lower by 250. That means in 2017, if you would follow IFRS, your expense was lower. Expense lower means your net income was higher. Your net income higher means your retained earning was higher. That means because of this less R&D expense in 2017, their retained earning is overstated. So you have to reduce beginning retained earning. And how much? Of course by 250. Now think of another item. Intangible assets. IFRS originally recorded intangible asset as 250. And then what happened? This year, they recorded amortization, they reduced their asset by 50. So if you look at their balance sheet, December 31st, 2018, their intangible asset amount is 200,000. But GAAP should not show any intangible assets. So GAAP needs to eliminate the intangible assets. So you have to eliminate intangible assets. I'm just writing all notes so that you understand why it's debit, credit, intangible assets. But how much? It was originally 250, then you already reduced by 50,000, so your intangible assets you have to reduce by 200,000. Now if you compare only 2018, here they have an expense, GAAP should not show that expense. So you have to eliminate that expense too. Now, if I combine everything together, first you have to reduce your beginning retained earning. Reduce means retained earning is a credit thing, you have to debit it. So I'll debit beginning retained earning 250. Sorry for squeezing it, but I just wanted to show everything. So I'm gonna debit it because I have to reduce retained earning, which is a credit item. So I will debit beginning retained earning. I have to eliminate intangible assets. GAAP will never allow these intangible assets. So I will credit intangible assets. But how much? Intangible was originally 250. IFRS already reduced because of first year's amortization 50,000. So currently their balance sheet shows the intangible as 200,000. So I'm going to reduce the intangible assets by 200,000. And don't forget about this amortization expense. You should not show under GAAP. So you have to eliminate that amortization expense. It is an expense and I have to remove it, so I'm going to credit it. So amortization expense will be credited this year's 50,000. So I talked a lot because I want everyone to know the logic. Don't be mechanical or just memorize. This entry will be on exam, but make sure you understand why it is debited, why it is credited.